Hey guys, welcome back to RevAtlas. I'm Sandeep, and in today's video we're going to be doing something very different and interesting. But right before that, I would like to actually make one thing clear. I want to put out more videos out there for you guys, but currently the COVID-19 lockdown situation doesn't allow us to do that, primarily because there aren't any new devices that are being launched, nor are we receiving any new devices. Now, there were a couple of devices that were supposed to reach us towards the end of March before the situation happened, but all of those are stuck in transit and we're not sure when there will be a relaxation in terms of couriers or e-commerce. So until then, until a clear decision happens on that front, we will be probably without much content. And the primary reason for that was I didn't feel like just making any video for the sake of making videos and for the sake of putting videos out there. I wanted to make videos that made sense. So I know the number of videos that came out have been very less, very limited, but still I felt those videos are still fine. But now what we're going to do is a few more videos that I felt are a bit different or a bit out of the box, at least compared to what we do usually. So today's video is going to be about the OnePlus One. So I was basically clearing the stuff that I had at home, and we were planning to shift to Hyderabad, which again got extended, and we're not sure when we'll be able to do so because of the current situation. But during that process, I found out this smartphone, the OnePlus One, and I felt that it would be an interesting device to try and see if I can use this as my primary device in 2020. What are the differences that I found? What are the good things? What are the bad things? And during my course of using this for 3 days, what I found and why I finally stopped using it as well. So I want to let you guys know of all these things, and we're going to do that right now. But before we get started, please do make sure to hit the subscribe button and also turn on notifications to avoid missing videos from us in the future. Now let's get this started. So I'd like to start talking about the design of the OnePlus One, which at the time borrowed the design and the manufacturing and the process from Oppo. So they basically used Find 7 as a base, and they made use of Oppo's factories in order to manufacture it, considering that OnePlus was just a brand new company back then. Now, the design is something that you would not expect in the year 2020, but I still loved it for a couple of reasons, and the primary reason is the sandstone finish at the back. Now, I don't know how many of you had experienced this, and if you haven't, it's something that I feel was mind-blowing at the time, primarily because it felt unlike anything else. There's just something very different about the sandstone finish, both in terms of the look and feel, that felt very refreshing. First of all, it had this sort of a texture at the back which was 3D and not just 2D, not just in terms of the visuals, but actually it felt really good when holding it. It had this additional grip that made sure that the phone didn't fall out of your hands. It had a beautiful coating which made sure that it didn't attract any fingerprints, and most importantly, it felt like it has a life of its own, considering how with time, with usage, the sandstone actually did fade out a bit. It was a true to life sort of case, not case, a back panel actually. So I also love the way it makes a sound. It has a slight sound. I'm not sure if the mic can pick this, but try this. So this was a bit more coarse when it was brand new. Of course, this is a smartphone that has been used. The next thing I would like to talk about is the screen. So the screen is definitely an interesting experience, since it's been a really long time that I have seen a screen that's 16:9 in terms of the aspect ratio, especially on a smartphone. So it felt very refreshing to watch content on this. And while I do love 21:9 aspect ratio or wider aspect ratios for that cinematic feel, it feels refreshing to watch videos on this aspect ratio, honestly, because we are still making videos in 16:9, and the primary reason for that was that YouTube didn't allow us to add end cards to our videos if they were in 21:9. So we shifted back to this, and we stopped letterboxing because you couldn't see it properly on smartphones. Smartphones are rather screens like this PC screen here that weren't actually pinch to zoom or didn't support pinch to zoom. So one of the things I love also about the screen was the fact that it supports double tap to wake, as well as double tapping the notification bar in order to lock it again. That's really cool. We had the notification LED here, which is amazing. The screen itself is not too bad. I expected a bit worse in terms of the overall look and feel, but I found the sharpness to be fine. The only major complaint I found was the fact that the contrast levels and the brightness was not too high. But then again, these past few days that I've been testing this was always indoors, so I didn't really find it too much of a hassle. But I'm sure that if I do go outdoors, especially under bright sunlight, it would be an issue. And I remember noting this back in the day when I used the OnePlus One as well. This is a bit scratched currently because there's a screen protector on top, but the screen underneath is actually pretty good. And the really important thing I would like to stress upon that OnePlus had back in the day was the fact that they offered so much choice to the users. So the reason for these huge bezels at the top and bottom is not just because the technology hadn't matured then to have bezel-less screens, but also because the bottom chain houses touch sensitive buttons. So there are 3 different buttons here. But OnePlus also gave users the choice to use on-screen buttons if they want. So this maximizes screen estate. You are not using any portion of the screen for keys, but what happens is some people may not like this. They would like to have it on screen, and they had the option to do so. You could customize the backlighting brightness, you could customize how long the backlighting would stay on for, you could do a lot of things, and even customize the on-screen key layout. So these are things that most smartphones these days don't give. Another thing is that they had a SIM card tray which actually came with a micro SIM. So this was at a time where micro SIMs had slowly started, or rather brands in smartphones had slowly started the shift from micro SIM to nano SIM. So it came with a SIM tray which was micro SIM, but you also had another SIM tray in the box which was a nano SIM. So depending on what SIM you had, you could just swap out the tray, as simple as that, and basically use your SIM without having to cut it or get a brand new SIM. The other amazing thing was the fact that despite having this beautiful sandstone finish and sandstone body, it was still possible to change the back cover. So this entire panel, by removing the SIM card slot, you can actually start prying the back and the entire back comes off. And this was an official thing which didn't void any warranty. You could buy bamboo covers for it, you could buy different covers for it, and that was a really great thing. Or in the event that you actually damage your phone's back, unlike the glass phones of today, you don't need to head into a service center and buy and give it in for repair. You can just go to the shop, buy a brand new cover and just place it on and exchange it. You can even change it based on your look. Of course, nowadays you get cases for OnePlus phones and other phones that have different sort of materials. OnePlus still has the sandstone finish on the case, but using a case on a phone defeats the purpose of a phone's brilliant design or brilliant handling. And that is one of the sad parts that we have to live with today. Phones have become so fragile that we are forced to use cases and covers, despite them having such beautiful designs. But the OnePlus One truly was a phone that you could use without a case, and I did so as well, and it felt really nice and really relieving at that time, really free to do so. In terms of performance, I didn't find any major issues. It still felt really fast, especially considering the specifications. It came with 4 GB of RAM, it had 64 GB of internal storage, it had a Snapdragon 801 chipset, which even in terms of gaming or even some multitasking, it performs very well. Of course, I may not be able to achieve the same level of efficiency in certain tasks such as Photoshop Express or some other editing apps, or heavy multitasking might eventually bring the phone to a halt, but at the end of the day, it still works fairly well in 2020. The main difference, the main issue that I found was in relation to the cameras. Now, smartphone cameras have come a hell of a long way since 2014, including OnePlus cameras. Now, even today, I would say that OnePlus cameras are not up there with the rest of the bunch. Maybe the 8 Pro is an exception from what I read and see online, but rest of the cameras I've seen have not reached the level of other flagships or other devices that they compete against generally. But nonetheless, all phones have generally become much better, including mid-rangers, and this, it pains me to say, has aged very badly in that aspect. The cameras are very poor, both in well-lit conditions and low-lit conditions. I have a few samples that I shot during this period of lockdown, but I'll try to get some other samples as well if I have any from my archives for the OnePlus One and show you what you can expect. Of course, this came with Cyanogen mod out of the box. At the time they had a partnership with the brand, and it was something that enthusiasts really liked, but things fell through and OnePlus eventually released Oxygen OS for this. But the great thing about OnePlus One is that they have a very strong community which still has great ROMs like Lineage OS, and it still apparently performs really well. Now, in terms of the connectivity and in terms of the audio quality and stuff, it's still got you covered because you have dual band Wi-Fi on this. You have a 3.5mm audio jack which outputs great quality. But one thing that I think is probably because this phone is old and is used are the speakers. I do remember it being a bit louder than it actually is, but it's also probably due to the fact that now we have phones with much louder speakers, especially phones like the ROG Phone 2, the iPhone, etc. very loud. So I think maybe at the time, while this was impressive, maybe it hasn't aged well. But what's really important is the fact that it has two stereo speakers at the bottom, which was really awesome at the time and I really loved it, I remember. Overall, other than that, I think it's not much to complain about. Like I said, the bezels are there, and that's because the funny thing is this is a smartphone with a 5.5-inch screen, but yet it's similar to my Pixel 4 XL in terms of the overall surface area. It looks more or less the same, slightly shorter and maybe a bit wider because of the aspect ratio. So that's weird, but it's still not bad, to be honest. It's still manageable. And even at the top and bottom, this sort of a depression, it easily collects dust. So if you keep it in your pocket, the lint and stuff or whatever dirt is there, it easily accumulates there. And even now I can see, despite having cleaned right before the video, it's already gathering dust, particles and stuff, because I've been wiping it on my pants or my shirt. And that's something else that I felt was worth mentioning. I don't remember if I noticed this at the time, but that is definitely something that kind of bothers me right now. In terms of the battery, I think that's the last point to cover. I felt that this would still last me an entire day of use. The funny thing is that it comes with the 3100 mAh battery, which by modern standards is extremely small, even if you look at iPhone territory. So a 3100 mAh battery, back then this was an endurance champion. I remember getting 8 hours or more, if not, and that too for a flagship smartphone was insane in terms of screen on time. So right now I got somewhere between 6, which is also possibly due to the fact that smartphone usage has become more heavy, and also this is a used smartphone, so the battery cycle would have depleted some of the battery's retention capacity. So all these things included, it's still putting up a strong fight. And I do see some people online who have actually swapped out the batteries for new ones, and they are reporting as good as new sort of battery life. And this is a still very strong smartphone in 2020. The charging speed, and it charges over micro USB, by the way. The charging speed is one thing that did bother me. It took quite a long time. I'm not sure if it's again because of the battery being old, but it took close to 3 hours. I'm not sure if that was the official time back then, but it took close to 3 hours even with the fastest charger I could find, and it showed fast charging as well. So these are some of the things that I noticed, but overall I would say for a smartphone that is approaching 6 years of its life, it's holding on really well. And full credits to OnePlus for doing so, because I feel out of every single phone out there, especially in the Android camp, OnePlus phones are the ones that are probably going to last the longest in terms of usability because of their enriched software experience and the high-end hardware that they pack into it. Of course, some of the things that I miss is, like I said, the choice that users get. Like earlier, OnePlus didn't provide IP rating or a headphone jack or these kind of things. They omitted all these things. Even wireless charging wasn't added until recently, and they gave lame excuses for the same. I felt that they had the slogan of never settle. They still do, but I felt that they have slowly over time sort of relaxed that motto of never settle. But nonetheless, I would really like to see if OnePlus can make a smartphone like this again. Something that is again a flagship killer, again in the territory of around 21,000, 22,000 rupees, but yet provides everything you need and nothing you don't, which is actually borrowed from Poco. But something like that would be a really killer device, because Poco did the same thing with the F1. Essentially, they brought about a OnePlus One successor from another brand. and I feel that it's high time that OnePlus brings such a phone to us as well, for people who still believe in the brand, for people who are loyalists, for people who own the OnePlus One and found it to be a great device. So if you are still thinking of picking up one for yourself, it's available for around 4,000 3,000 rupees. If it's in good condition, I would say why not? Why spend 8,000 rupees on some other smartphone which is not so great? If you can live with the bad cameras, I would say that this is a really great smartphone even in 2020. That's it for this video, guys. I hope you liked it. Please do hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications for more videos like this. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Stay safe, stay indoors.